Next, let's look at how to find the perimeter of a circle. And there is a name for this. It's called circumference. And I think circum means around something, which is, where the term circle comes from and all that. So let's take a look at a circle and see if we can, kind of figure out a couple things. So if we say the center of our circle is here, and then the circle is made up, the outside of the circle is made up of all the points that are all the same distance away from this center. So all these distances that I'm showing here, these straight line distances, are all the same. And if I take one of those, right, and I decide I'm gonna, draw it cleanly here, so we'll just leave it like that, and we go and I draw one, that is called a radius. All right, a radius goes from the center of the circle out to the edge. If I decide to go from this outside here and go through the center and then go all the way to the other side, that also has a name, and that's called a diameter. And a diameter is made up of two radiuses, which if you look at it, it makes sense because I know that this distance right here is equal to that distance. And so that makes sense. The distance, the diameter is two of the radiuses. And when we talk about the formula for circumference, the book gives you two formulas. We're going to mainly focus on one. And the one we're going to focus on is this one that's 2 pi r. So in order to find the circumference of an object, you multiply 2 times pi, which we know is a constant that is related pretty much only to circles. But it's this thing that kind of happens naturally with circles, and it's pretty amazing that they figured it out and found it. Right now they're currently trying to see if the decimal ever repeats or if it ends, and so far it doesn't, so we classify pi as an irrational number. And then so you multiply 2 times pi, and then you multiply it by the radius. All right. The other definition they give you is pi times d, which if you think about it makes sense because if you look at 2r is also your diameter. So you can use either. I primarily only use 2 pi r because it's just what I'm used to doing, and for me, remembering one thing is enough. All right, so let's do some examples. So if we're going to find the circumference of this circle, they're giving us r, right? They're not giving us d, they're giving us r, the radius. So the circumference is equal to 2 times pi times the radius. So we got 2, and then let's just leave it as pi because we'll let the calculator do that. And then the radius is 3. And so usually what I'll do is I'll simplify as much as I can before I put it in the calculator. So I'll do 3 times 2, that's 6, and you get 6 pi. And then we pull up our calculator, and we go 6 times, and you hit the pi button, and then I think we will put these out to the nearest tenth. I don't know what Alex usually wants you to do, but we'll do the nearest tenth. So we'll say 18.8 is where we want to be with this. So we would say 18.8, and then like other perimeter measures, it's just a single linear measure, so it's 18.8 meters. Okay, let's look at another one. Now, this one, they're giving us a diameter, all right? So if they're giving me a diameter of 10, that means my radius is the diameter divided by 2. So it's just 10 divided by 2, which gives me 5. And then I'll put that number in. So I got C equals 2 pi r, so 2 times pi times my radius, which is 5, right? 2 times 5 is 10 pi, and you can see Mr. Simons, if you just would have used d and just done d pi, yeah, well, you can do that. But like I said, this is kind of how I grew up doing it, and it makes me work, and I don't mind having to put in that extra step. So circumference is 10 pi, so we'll pull up our calculator, and we'll go 10 times pi, and we get 31.4. as our number, and then that would be inches, 31.4 inches. See what else we got here? All right, this one. All right, so what you're going to want to do with this one is make a couple connections. The first connection you want to make is this 4 feet represents the diameter. all right, because they should put a point there. They didn't, but we're going to say that this 4 feet is the diameter, which means that my radius is 2. All right, so that's good. The next thing you want to recognize is when I do find my circumference, I only have half the circle here. So my circumference is going to be half of that. So let's figure out what the full circumference would be. So it would be 2 pi r, which is 2 times pi times 2. So it's 4 pi. And then before we go ahead and multiply it, that's the full circumference. So if I want to figure out what half of the circumference is, I'm going to take half of this 4 pi. And half of 4 pi is 2 pi. So I'm going to, at that point, bust out the calculator, figure this out, and you get 6.3. And that would be 6.3 feet. All right. Now, but what I figured out, right, for this figure is I figured out this. Okay, I just realized this as I was doing this. I still have to factor in this little bit right here. So you would take 6.3 and then you would add 4 to it. And then you would get 10.3 feet. Okay, so that is the entire distance around that whole figure. All right, let's see what else we got. A quarter circle with a radius of 7 inches. So a quarter circle would look something like that with my center there, and you have a radius of 7. So that's 7 and that's 7. And so if I know that this is 7 and this is 7 and I know this is 7, if I can figure out what this is, I'll be able to add it all up and get my perimeter. So let's figure out what the circumference of the entire, oh, that's really bad, what the circumference of that entire circle would be, right? So if we do that, first, let's do circumference equals 2 pi r. So it's going to equal 2 times pi, and my r is 7. So it's 14 pi would be the entire circumference, right? But I only need 1/4 of this because it's a quarter circle. A quarter means 1/4. So 1/4 of the circumference would be 1/4 of 14 pi, which is 14 over 4 pi. And then do a little simplification, and you get 7/2 pi. All right, so when I put this in the calculator, what I will do is I will do 7 divided by 2 to get my 7/2, and then multiply that by pi, and I get 10.99, which rounds up to 11. So we'll say, so that's 11.0. And then to find my entire perimeter, you have 11.0 plus 7 plus 7. So we got this, we got that, and we got that. Add them all up. 7 plus 7 is 14. 14 plus 11 is 25. And it is inches is my unit. So there you go. So that's kind of how these circle things work. Good luck with these. Have some fun.